So I am excited to have the opportunity to continue in my series. We began a new series last week entitled, When the Going Gets Tough. Thank you. Appreciate it. When the Going Gets Tough. We're talking about following Jesus when it's not very easy, following Jesus when it's inconvenient, following Jesus when it's tough. You know what I mean? Sometimes as we follow Jesus in our lives, eventually we will all find ourselves in a place where it's just kind of, you know? It doesn't suit us. Every single one of us at some point in time will find occasions and excuses to try to take an exit ramp. Just slide over here and do our own thing. Every single one of us will. Last week we covered the first of what I'm calling the conditions. Every single one of us will find ourselves in some of these conditions, and these conditions are where following Jesus can sometimes be the toughest. So last week we talked about the anger condition. Thank you, Ann. Gold star. The anger condition. And we talked about every one of us, we get angry, we get mad sometimes, and oftentimes in our anger we take a little sidestep and we want to handle things ourselves, right? But we discovered in the anger condition that the best thing we could do was wait. When angry, wait. And then the second thing we discovered is we need to leave the table flipping to Jesus. Before we move forward in this series, though, I have some questions, and these are actual questions, not rhetorical. I need you to answer me, but they're imperative in order for us to continue to discuss this next condition. So, number one, here, church, everybody ready? Do you believe that Jesus is the best option you have in life? Yes. Okay, good. Do you believe, see, I think I could just start asking stuff and y'all would say yes. Do y'all think I should get a raise? No, okay, gosh, I got to know. Do you believe the life Jesus wants for you is the best life you could live? Yes. Do you believe Jesus' way is the best way? Yes. Okay. Do you believe that what Jesus wants you to have in life is the best possible things you could have? Yes. Okay, good. Most of you agreed, and for that I am very thankful. And the reason I asked you those questions is because it dawned on me recently to just how important that trust was. How important it was that you believe that Jesus was the best option you have. His life that he has for you is the best life you can live. That his way is the best way. That what the things that he wants you to have are exactly the things that you should have. That trust is imperative in that relationship with Jesus. And the truth of the story is that kind of trust is true in every relationship. Every single relationship. Is it true in your relationship with your kids? It's true in your relationship with your spouse. Brittany and I have that kind of trust in our relationship. I'll tell you a story. We were on a trip years ago. And we were kind of at a street market, you know, like a flea market place. Crowds of people. We were walking down through the crowd and looking at all sorts of stuff. And all of a sudden, a guy came up and he grabbed Brittany's arm and accused her of stealing. And just got her and was like, hey, you took something off the table. And so I kind of, saw this happen, and I entered into this. It kind of got him. And I was like, hey, man. I said, hey, she hasn't taken anything. And I could tell he was getting very heated. So I looked at Brittany. I'm like, run. And so she took off running. Listen. And so I ended up kind of staging off and took off running with her. All of a sudden, there were these guys chasing us. I took her. We found a set of stairs, ran up the set of stairs, got up there, and we're on a roof. And the roof, the only way off, dead-ended, the only way off was to jump to another roof. And so I stepped up on the ledge, and I looked, and I was like, I think we can make it. I turned around to Brittany, and I said, do you trust me? And she said, yeah. I mean, she looked deep into my eyes. And she said, yeah. And I went, all right. And so I grabbed her hand, and we jumped to this other roof and landed safely. And then I took her to my hidden tower where they overlooked Agrabah. And turns out my pet monkey, Abu, is the one who stole this item. Y'all know this is Aladdin, right? It's not a real story. Sometimes I just get tired of using my own. And I just commandeer somebody else's. I feel like, though, even though I used Aladdin, and I'm not Aladdin, and she's not Jasmine, I feel like it still drives home a very important point. We have to trust Jesus. We have to believe that Jesus has our best interest at heart, right? That he is going to take care of us. That what he really wants for us is the best. You have to believe that. Everything that he wants you to have is the best. That trust is essential. And it's essential in this next condition that we're going to talk about that's a little heavier than last week's condition, and that is the selfish condition. Are y'all ready? Everybody with me? Yes. It doesn't take long in our walk with Christ to recognize, as we begin following Him, that His plan, His will for our life, and maybe even His expectations at point in time doesn't necessarily align with what we want or what we want to do. As we follow Christ, what happens is oftentimes we're going along and all of a sudden we realize that what He wants us to do and where He wants us to be or where He wants us to go, all of a sudden it just doesn't line up with what we had in mind. Sorry, Jesus, that wasn't my plan. Sorry, Jesus, I had something else in mind for my life. Every single one of us. Sometimes it goes like this. We're going along in following Jesus, and we've made a commitment. We want to follow Him in our life, and all of a sudden in a sermon or in our quiet time or in something, Jesus says, hey, I'd like for you to change that about yourself. He says, hey, Tim, there's something that you're doing. I need you to change that. Hey, there's something in your life I need you to get rid of. There's something I need you to move on from. Or maybe something comes up in our life and we're going, oh, Jesus, I really want to do that. But then we look because we're trying to consider Jesus, we're trying to follow Him, and all of a sudden we go, oh, I'm not supposed to do that. Or perhaps we're just following Jesus, we're going along with Jesus, and all of a sudden He goes, I want you to do something, Tim. I want you to go somewhere, Rhonda. I have something I need you to do, Tammy. And all of a sudden this little, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a little twinge in our gut happens, and we think to ourselves, can't I just do what I want? Does this sound familiar? Can't I just do what I want? Jesus, can't I just keep this for myself? Can't I just live the way I want to live? We have thoughts like that. Before long it turns into, don't I deserve this? Aren't I entitled to this? I almost called it the entitled condition, but that's just a piece of it. I almost called it the deserve condition, but that's just a piece of it. It's the selfish condition. And we'll say something like, I mean, Jesus, after all, if I do what I want to do, if I just do this my way, who's it going to hurt? I mean, it's my life, right? Any of this sound familiar to y'all? Or is this just me? I have these thoughts? After all, this is my life. Who's it going to hurt? According to the internet, which we know is always right, selfishness is being concerned with oneself to the point of even obsession, seeking or concentrating to attain one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being without regard for others. That's selfishness. Biblically, we are told that this selfishness, obsession with self, is a dominating product and characteristic of our sinful nature. And this is what I'm saying. It ain't Maybelline, baby. You were born with it. You get it? It's a part of who you are. It was a part of your sinful nature. We were born with a natural inclination to please ourselves, to take care of numero uno. Ain't that right, Tony? That's never been more clear to me than when I had children. I'm serious. Have some kids. If you're questioning whether we're selfish just naturally or not, have yourself some children. You will learn very quickly it doesn't take a whole lot of time with a toddler to recognize that when they want something, they will step on you, they will push you, they will test you, they will manipulate you, they will squash you in order to get that thing that they want. That's what they'll do. They'll break whatever rules you create. Do y'all have that, or do y'all have perfect kids? Are y'all's kids perfect? I tell you what, just in case some of you are like, well, I don't know, little Johnny, he's so sweet. Let me just say this. I just want you to know, we did a little test this week. I just wanted to have a little fun. We have a preschool that meets here midweek. Excellent. It's super cool to have these little kids coming here, 30 or so little guys coming in, little guys and little girls. Tracy Haney is our preschool director. Lisa Collins is teacher. Tamara Luss teacher. They do an incredible job teaching these kids. But what we did this week is we put them in a room at a table, and we put some candy on the table, and then we just said, hey, look, don't eat the candy. Don't even touch it. Don't touch the candy. Don't even look at the candy. That's what we did. We said, don't look. And then we left the room. Y'all take a look. Trying hard, lady. Look at this guilt. Look at this guilt. I mean, do y'all feel like that makes a point? I do. As if the fact that we're born that way isn't enough. I believe we live in a world where we're constantly programmed to do what we want, to prioritize ourselves, to place the highest value imaginable on ourselves. We program. It's programmed into our lives. And listen, I want to say, those kids, they're born with it naturally. We're all born with it naturally. We want to take care of ourselves. But listen, we make it worse. Me and Brittany make it worse. We do that. Listen, we get our kids up every morning, wake them up on time. We feed them, cook them breakfast every morning. We put them in the car and take them exactly where they're supposed to be. I know that you're thinking like, well, this is just caring for your kids, Tim, but hang on. We make sure they have plenty of snacks and beverages for the trip. If it's a long trip, we make sure they have a neck pillow. We make sure that their devices are all charged. If we go by the store, we let them buy one thing, just so we don't have to listen to it. And we actually buy 3 things because we don't want to have to teach our kids how to share. We carry ridiculous amounts of toys in bags just so that they're okay for a second. I tell you, this is my personal, things that I'm struggling with. Other night I realized I was taking Letty up to bed and I had 9 loveys in my hands, 9 stuffed animals. She's like, I need the octopus, the puppy, the mermaid, she just names them all, and I'm just like, okay. We train them to do that. As we get older, it's no different. You turn on a podcast, you read a book, you watch a reel or a TikTok, and it says, you deserve to be happy. The message is clear. You deserve to be happy. You should do whatever you want. You should be whoever you want to be. Live however you want to live. We're born with it, and we're programmed to accept it. Everybody still with me? Selfishness, however, the selfish condition, is incredibly dangerous to our walk with Christ. Just a pinch here, something went wrong. The selfish condition is incredibly dangerous to our walk with Christ. These moments of selfishness, a pinch here, a dab there, can take us far, far from where Jesus wants us to be. It can get us incredibly out of step with Him. We're no longer going the way He wants us to go. We're going our own way. Can I tell you a story? Can I tell you a story? I think it's important that we make sure we understand the selfish condition, that we see exactly what it does and how it affects our lives. Are you ready? 2 Samuel chapter 11 is where you can be in your Bibles if you want to follow along. I'm going to tell a lot of the story. This story centers, around King David. David was chosen. He's King David at this point, okay? He's King David. So in case you don't know who he was chosen by God. He was anointed to lead the people of Israel as king one day, and he's made it there. In order to get there, he slayed Goliath. You know that story. He survived an onslaught of his own king looking to kill him, but out of jealousy and greed, he became king, united the tribes of Israel, beat many of the foes that they had surrounding them, captured the city of Jerusalem, brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, had built a palace. I mean, he's done all of these incredible things, and it's the ending of wintertime when we start this story. And he's king, living it up in Jerusalem. And this is what it says. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. So one thing you need to understand just real quick is during this period of history, people groups didn't go to war in the wintertime. It was hard. Provisions were hard. You were just trying to survive in the winter, right? You didn't want to be out trying to travel and get to places. So in the spring, what would normally happen is all of the people groups, these surrounding areas, these, I guess we'd call them with boundaries, they would rise up, they would get their armies together, and they would go out and they would attack villages and towns that were nearby, and they would try to expand their boundaries, but they would also try to plunder other places, and that's what typically happened. We're told that when the kings would normally go out to war, David decided to send Joab in his stead, and Joab is David's nephew and his army commander. This is what it says. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. We're told that again. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, what was David doing? Taking a nap, okay. David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. Can you see him? How do you see him when you do this? Y'all know, close your eyes real quick. Everybody close your eyes. How do you see David? In his city, in his palace on a roof. Silk robe, right? Kind of just showing a little chest, probably. Fluffy white slippers. That's what I imagine. Drinking a big, tall glass of milk. That's just what I imagine. Someone comes out with a tray, a silver tray, loaded with Oreos for King David. That's how I want to wake up from a nap when I'm king. You know what I'm saying? All right, you can open your eyes now. He's walking around, and I just see him just going like, we did it, God. This is great. How great am I? I mean, we've made it, right? We've made it. We're in the palace. Everything that was said has happened. We've beaten just about everybody. My guys are out there whipping people for us right now. This is great. This is the best. Read what it says. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. All right. He can see her good enough to tell that she's beautiful and that she's taking a bath. How do you imagine the king did this? Was it like he was just walking and seeing her and was like a passing glance? Oh, no. You think it was that? Or you think that all the women were like, no. She's beautiful. She's nude. We know what happened. He's the king, right? He just watches her. So maybe stalkerishly. I don't know. Verse 3 said, he sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite, who he knew was one of his soldiers who was fighting with Joab, fighting the Ammonites. So David said, all well, and went on about his day. Is that what happened? You don't think it stopped David? He was on the want wagon. He saw something he wanted, and something clicked in him. I don't know what it was. Maybe he thought to himself, I'm king. I can do what I want. I noticed her. I think he just decided he wanted her, and so he invited her. Maybe he made an excuse like, well, her husband's off at war, so I should check on her. Or perhaps he said, maybe I should bring her here and feed her a great dinner and bless her because, her husband's all fighting for me. Maybe he made all those excuses, but we all get this, right? We all understand that he just decided he was going to do what he wanted to do. Everybody agreement? Verse 4, it says, Then David sent messengers to get her. And she came to the palace. And when she came to the palace, he slept with her. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying, I'm pregnant. Uh-oh. If you don't know the rest of the story, I'm going to try to summarize it for you really quickly. David panics. He's committed adultery. And he panics. And he wants to cover up his wrong. So he sent for Uriah the Hittite, had him brought from battle to the palace. And he just tries to find out how the battle's going. Then he tries to send Uriah home to be with his wife, to sleep with his wife, so that Uriah will believe that that kid is his kid. But Uriah refuses. He refuses to go see his wife. Do you know why? He refused because the other men on the battlefield, his brothers in arms, they weren't getting that same luxury. And Uriah just refused to go and be with his wife when his men who were fighting could not do the same thing. What a contrast from where David was. Uriah refuses, so David attempts to get Uriah drunk in order to just to convince him that he has done that, but it fails. Since David's schemes fail, David feels like he has but one choice. He has to get rid of Uriah. So David sits down and he writes a letter. I want you to think about this. He sits down and writes a letter about Uriah. And he gives it to Uriah in an envelope, smiling. Take this to Joab. Uriah takes the letter to Joab, and the letter says, put Uriah in the front lines where the battle is the fiercest. And when it gets the most heated, I want you to withdraw your troops and abandon him. I want you to leave him on his own. So, Joab did what he was instructed. He put Uriah on the front lines. The battle got fierce. They pulled away, and it says in the Bible that Uriah was killed, but also that several others were killed as well because of what they did. Uriah was dead. Bathsheba mourned. Verse 27, this is what it says. I want you to see this. When the period of mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her to the palace, and she became one of his wives. I'm sure David said this is the noble thing to do, right? Then she gave birth to a son. Look at these words. But the Lord was displeased with what David had done. You see this? The Lord was displeased with what David had done. It didn't take long for God to share his displeasure with David either. He sent his prophet Nathan to David, who, if you get time, you should go read this whole story. It's one of my favorite little pieces about how God uses Nathan to share what David has done. But I want to show you a verse that I believe points out what we're talking about, this condition that we're talking about in 2 Samuel 12:8. After Nathan has shared how displeased God is with David, he has this message. This is God speaking. I gave you your master's house. 2 Samuel 12:8. I gave you your master's house. I gave you the kingship, is what he's saying. And his wives. And the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. What's he speaking to? What's he acknowledging? He's acknowledging David's selfishness. He's saying, I would have given you so many other things. There were so many other things that I wanted to do for you and with you. But you are living like what all these things that I've done. This place that I brought you to, you're living like it's not enough. You've made these decisions and chose to do what you wanted and decided what you wanted was better than what I could give you. That you needed more. You deserve more. And that selfishness has led you to sin against me. I'm just going to read you this, but I want you to see what selfishness does. I want you to see the cost of selfishness. God continues to say, why then have you despised the word of the Lord and done this horrible deed? For you have murdered Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the Ammonites, and you have stolen his wife. From this time on, your family, listen to this, I want you to listen. From this time on, your family will live by the sword, because you have despised me by taking Uriah's wife to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Because of what you have done, I will cause your own household to rebel against you. I will give your wives to another man before your own eyes, and he will go to bed with them in public view. You did it secretly, but I will make this happen to you openly in the sight of all Israel. I want you to see what this selfishness, this act of selfish, what it cost him. God says, here's the deal. You'll never be at peace again. Because you acted selfishly and sinned in your selfishness, because you did that, because you decided that you wanted to do it your way and you wanted all of these things and you had to have all these things, you'll never be at peace again. Your household will always be at war with the people around it. And not only that, but your kids, this sin is going to penetrate through them. And it's going to cause them to rebel against you. These relationships with your kids are going to be terrible. Your own wives are going to commit adultery against you. Can I describe what selfishness does? Everybody still with me? I told you it was a little heavier. Selfishness destroys. That's what it does. Selfishness destroys. And the first thing it's going to destroy is the very life we think it's benefiting. See, when we're self-loving, doing what we want, taking care of ourselves, see, we think we're building our own life up. We think we're going to be happy. We think we're going to create and get all of the things that we want. But the truth of the story is, it's going to destroy us. That's what it's going to do. It's going to destroy that life, just like it did with David here. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, this is what Jesus said to his disciples, and I think he is reiterating this point. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Y'all know these verses. We used them just recently. You must give up your own way. You must stop living your way and start living my way. Stop doing what you want to do and start doing what I want you to do. You must give up your own way and take up your cross and follow me. But look at this, verse 25. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. If you still try to do what you want to do, you still try to get everything that you think you want or everything you think you deserve, you will lose that life. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. So it destroys. Selfishness destroys. And at first it'll destroy our life. But I want to tell you, it also destroys the lives of those around us. You have to see that this act of selfishness, it led to Uriah to die, but it also led for other soldiers. Several other soldiers, we're told in the Bible, died as a cause of that. Think of the far-reaching effects of David's selfish act. How many families did it affect? What about just little things that maybe we don't think about? How did it affect Joab? Knowing what he was asked to do. Knowing what he did. How did it affect how he viewed David? Then we see how it affected his family and what God said, this is going to lead to so many bad things. First off, blessings and things I was going to do for you. I would have given you so much more. There were things that God was going to do that it cost him. But his family never lived in peace. His own children rebelled against him. His wives committed adultery. All of these things stemming from that selfishness. Selfishness destroys. When we act selfish, when we choose to be selfish, we are setting ourselves up to lose and to destroy the thing we think we're building up and to hurt those closest to us. Our families and our friends. When we choose to be selfish, it will inevitably cause them harm. That's the truth. Can you identify the selfish moment that led to all this destruction? Like when you look in David's story, this is something I thought about this week. When you read about this selfishness, can you identify the moment that led to all this? Was it the letter to Joab where he had Uriah killed? No, I think it was before that. Was it David sleeping with Bathsheba? No, I don't think so. I think it was earlier than that. Was it when he invited her over? No, it wasn't. Was it when he gazed at her in the bath too long? Was that the moment that it all went wrong? No, I think it was earlier than that. I think the selfish moment began when David stayed home from the battlefield. When you go and read 2 Samuel chapter 11, what you will discover is that twice it is mentioned, it is pointed out to us, David stayed home. All the other kings went out to battle, but David chose to stay home. I think there's a reason that the Bible has it there for us. I believe God put it there for us so that we could identify the moment that selfishness began in him. Don't you think it went like something like this? David goes, I fought countless times. Right? I have fought countless times. I have led this army forever. I have fought, I ran for my life, spent time in caves. I have fought more enemies, beaten more enemies, done more for God than, I've done so much for God, it's ridiculous. How many times I've answered his call. And we don't really have any enemies this year. Ammonites are over there. We got a couple of little battles going on. But my guys can handle it. I've accomplished so much. Shouldn't I just chill? Can't I take one spring off? After all, who's it going to hurt? Do you think it went something like that? Who's it going to hurt? I believe that was the selfish moment. David decided to do what he wanted to do rather than what God expected of him as king. Our selfish moments may be just as obscure. It may be the littlest thing, but it'll start with some phrase or some word like, can I just do what I want to do? Don't I deserve this? Aren't I entitled? Can't I just do it my way? That's how it'll begin. I got to ask you a question. Selfishness is so dangerous. Is it you? Are you in danger? Is there something in your life that you've hung on to, or something that you're doing that you know good and well you're justifying by saying you deserve it? You're justifying it by saying that it's just something you want to do. Other people do it. I get to do it. I guess I can get to do it too. If so, I want to help you. I've prayed about this all week trying to decide what God wanted me to say. I need to tell you one more story. In Mark chapter 10, there's another story, and a man comes to Jesus. I'm going to make it super brief. a man comes running up to Jesus. Jesus is with his disciples. A man comes running up and he says, hey, Jesus, what do I got to do? He actually kneels down in front of Jesus. He's excited. He goes, what do I got to do to get to heaven? And Jesus said, well, he said, man, you got to keep all the commandments. And so the guy says, okay, I think I've done that. And Jesus said, you can't commit murder. Guy said, check, got it, never committed murder. He said, what about adultery? Have you ever committed adultery? No, sir, check. I haven't committed adultery. He's like, okay. And he says, you can't steal. No, sir, I've never stolen anything. You got to honor your father and mother. You can't falsely testify. You can't do any of it. You got to keep all the commandments. And the guy's like, yep, check, 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 check. And this is what he said. He says, I have followed God since childhood. And Jesus says, okay, cool. He said, then there's just one thing left to do. The guy said, okay, what is it? He said, sell all your possessions, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. And the guy goes, he says his face fell because he had a lot of possessions. He had a lot of money. And he said he turned and he walked away sad. Jesus identified something that this man wasn't willing to get rid of. Jesus identified something that's man. But this is the thought that occurred to me this week, and this is what I believe is practical for us. I felt like God spoke to me when I read this story, and I felt like God said, do you really believe that man only had one thing? Do you believe that was the one thing he hadn't done? And I was like, no. He was a human. I know there had to be other things that Jesus would have, revealed, so no. And I felt like God said, then that's what you tell your church. That's how you deal with selfishness practically. That's how you address selfishness in your own life. As I told this story, as we talked about selfishness, I believe this, the prayer that we prayed at the beginning, every single one of us identified something inside of us. Identified an area of our life where we know we're being selfishness. I want to encourage you in something. The way Jesus wants you to deal with that is one thing at a time. Let's address that. Whatever it is, it's ingrained in us. I'm telling you, this selfish thing, it is ingrained in us. It is programmed. It is everywhere around us. Go to Jesus often and ask him, show me the places where you want me to change. Show me the one thing that you want me to deal with this week or this month, and help me to address it, because the answer to selfishness is self-denial. That's how we reprogram our mind. So as followers of Christ, listen, you know this. You know me, and you know our message here. You're not expected to be perfect. You're not expected to just get everything fixed in your life. But I'll tell you what you could do today. You could address one thing. And you can figure out how you're supposed to get back in line with Jesus. You can figure out how you're supposed to give him that, and how you're supposed to deny yourself. Because the verse says this, 2 Corinthians 5:15, he died for everyone so that those who receive his new life will no longer live for themselves. Instead, they will live for Christ. And that's how we do it. We live for Christ every day by finding those things in our life where we're being selfish. And we learn how not to be. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for this church. I thank you for just the opportunity to be together. And this is my prayer. I know that every single one of us have something in our life that we identified, that we saw, and we know we're not doing it the way you want us to do it. We're not living the way you want us to live. We haven't even given you a thought, probably. If we're being honest, we probably haven't given you a thought when it comes to how we're being selfish. This is my prayer. My prayer is that we'll give you a thought. That it'll begin with that. What is there in me that I'm being selfish? What is it that I'm holding on to that I think I deserve, that I want to do my way? I pray that you will reveal that to us, and you will help us address it accordingly. That we will deny ourselves, and we will look to you and do what you want us to do. I believe with all of my heart that this church believes that what you want for them is best. I believe that what they believe is that the life that you have for them is the best life that they can live. and that the things that you want them to have are more important than the things they think they should have. I believe that. So help us to acknowledge it, help us to see it, and help us to focus on you. In Jesus' name, everybody says, Amen. Thank you guys so much. I love you, and I'll see you next week.